I don't like dwelling on mistakes. Let me start with that. This is a challenge for me, not because I haven't made mistakes, because I've been making plenty of mistakes. I've been in business for a long time. You have to make mistakes. You have to try things. You have to fail. But what I do know is that the more I concern myself with my mistakes, the more I'm dwelling on them, the less likely I've moved on from them and learned from them. So I'm not one to dwell. I just don't. I think if something happens and I don't like the way that it went, whether it was a mistake or it was just like a blip or just like maybe a failure, but not really
you're good
life
at that.
altering, I'm just going to keep going.
But you're also really good at not dwelling.
Yeah,
since I've met you, it's like you make a decision, you're good. Like that's it. I don't think I've ever heard you look back at things and say like, oh, I wonder what. You never play the what if game, which is awesome. And that's something I struggle with in general. Not what if, but like I tend to.
What if we would have, or
correct.
What could have, or
But you're really good at that. So, and that's rubbed off on me a little bit more, and I'm getting better at it. But for the question itself, in terms of mistakes, everything's a learning, and we talked about this in an earlier episode where it's like, how do you handle L's and whatnot? Mm-hmm. Like, is it an L? Is it a mistake? Is it a if you didn't learn from it, then truly it isn't a lot. Like you screwed up.
Yeah. But
I would say there's a lot of things that I've learned from. So taking the lesson, it's hard to go back and say like I absolutely screwed up. I will say that there are certain things that if I had to go back and redo them, I'd probably do them differently. Mm-hmm. So maybe that's, and that ranges from like employing. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, is that a wisdom thing or a regret thing?
It's more wisdom. It's more like
it's not really regret. It's just, I would do it different because I know more now. Sure.
And you learn, and that's the thing. Like, or here's the thing: you make enough mistakes, you learn. You're learning from it. So, I mean, I'll start giving some examples of mistakes, quote unquote, that I feel I've made from pricing and allowing clients to kind of push you around a little bit. Scope creep, which Blake is probably sitting there laughing at me behind me right now going, yep. Things like that, not knowing when to push back. But again, as you grow over time, and it still happens. Like I can't say this without, knowing it's complete bunk, but it still happens. Like it's still, sometimes you're caught between a rock and a hard place and you have to, the client wins out on certain things. But in the beginning, and you can attest to this, it happened more often. It was
way more often.
You turn into a rug at some point and you just kind of get walked all over.
Because you're just trying to find yourself, figure out what you're doing. And I will add to that the concept of scope creep, which is basically just like, if anyone's unfamiliar with the term, what's the scope of work that you are paid to do? Right. And where was that made abundantly clear so that when additional things are asked of you, that's the creep, because that's where you absolutely have the right to say, oh, well, that is an upcharge because it's more time, it's more resources, it's more dollars. I will say, now that we're kind of unpacking this, the biggest mistake and the one thing that I feel like I'm constantly coaching people on is custom work. Now, I'm not saying like if something that you do is made to be custom, that's fine. But there's still probably parameters within how you do that custom work. And it's like your good, better, best sort of packages, right? The biggest trap in the world can be custom work. Like if you don't know what those key packages are for you, you're constantly designing totally custom deliverables with totally custom pricing. And that's where I think imposter syndrome and scope creep play the biggest role, because you are not making it so clear on how you do work, even if you're new to it. I always say that the biggest thing that you can say is how I typically do things, or how we typically do things, is because that says to your client, we do have a process. So yeah, I would say the biggest mistake I've ever made, and the one I continue to learn from, is custom work, because oftentimes you customize the smallest package for the lowest price, and that client usually doesn't even sign on with you after you've done so and taken all your prices down to make it great for them. It doesn't pay off because those clients don't end up being the right ones.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess to piggyback off of the fact of that whole idea and concept is that just being more specific with things like deliverables with clients, right? That's you can't just be like, well, we can kind of do this, or we can do providing a range. Like we'll provide 3 to 4 of whatever it is, videos. It's got to be one or the other. It's like very specific. We are going to provide 3 videos by this date.
You will get up to 2 edits of that within this frame of
correct.
time.
And so, I know Blake is nodding his head like this because that's another thing, like edits, right? Edit rounds, that's a huge thing. And that was a mistake that I continue to pay for because, edit rounds come back. The expectation that has been set is like, oh, unlimited edit rounds. No,
thank you.
That's not how you make money.
No.
Right?
No one's ever going to be happy because if you can make it perfect, then great.
Right.
But are we trying to ship it? Yeah, we need to get it done.